So Ross, your reaction?
Oh, I was so happy. When I saw the news last night, I thought I was dreaming, and it was like my dream came true. Bob Chapek had been running the business into the ground and had made some crucial errors in handling some very difficult situations, but it was time to really refocus the business back on creating great content for a reasonable cost.
Okay, so Ross, in terms of your prioritization here, and I want to bring to our audience a poll that we went to Twitter with. I know you're a big player on Twitter with hundreds of thousands of followers, but we've been shining a light on what they think the prioritization should be now. Is it the cost controls? Is it more thinking about content, the streaming perspective at the moment? Is it, Ross, actually, of course, what is the internal management of this business? Because Bob Chapek himself had made some, well, very criticized decision-making when it came to the politics within Florida and what the company stands for. From your perspective, streaming strategy is number one for our audience right here, right now. Is it number one for you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the streaming business that they've built over the last several years is amazing, and it was really led by Iger at the beginning to get into streaming, and so they got to this point where they now have hundreds of millions of subscribers, but their losses have ballooned, and I'm not really sure why there was such a lack of focus on the cost controls, especially last quarter, because the rest of the business, like parks and resorts and as well as the hotels and the cruise ships, many elements of the business are booming right now and hugely profitable. So we actually expected Disney to beat profits nicely this quarter, and it was like, where did this extra billion spent on the streamers go? And so, you know, Disney Plus and Hulu are great assets. ESPN Plus, they're great assets, and they've had a lot of money invested in it, but it's time to make this business profitable and make sense economically.
Ross, let's bring you some of what Bob said in a statement Sunday night when he was named as CEO. First of all, he seems as surprised as the rest of us, using the word amazement, but he also talks about these times remain quite challenging, I suppose, referring to macro conditions. You talked about profit. Is this just, you can't just turn the tap off and suddenly the losses from streaming go away and everything's dandy. How materially does he fix things at Disney?
Well, I think you've got really, I would say, three main issues that Disney faces. So the first, which we've been discussing, is how do we build a streamer with the right economics? And it's actually not that hard, because you do have a certain level of certainty of what your revenue is going to be, because it's a reoccurring revenue model. So Disney and Apple just recently raised prices on their streamers, so they can pretty well guess what they're going to take in revenue-wise over the next 12 months, and they just need to right-size the budget for it. So that isn't that big of a deal. You just have to do the right math. The second thing Disney needs to address is China. This is the really big, difficult challenge that many of my companies are facing, whether it be Disney, MGM in Macau, or Tesla in Shanghai. You know, we're just facing so much uncertainty, and the Shanghai park is closed again, and this is a big challenge for them, despite the rest of the parks business doing extremely well. Yeah. And then the third thing is, what are they going to do with their sports business? I personally love the ESPN brand and business, and I think that they need to be deeper in sports and deeper in sports betting, and if not, just get out of the sports business and spin it off or sell the ESPN brand. But I think they need to make a decision on what they're going to do with sports in the future. Now, I think Disney should stay in the sports business, but I think Iger will assess these things and make some great decisions.
And soon enough, we're likely to see the monetization in some parts of Disney Plus, Ross. I'm interested in the people behind Disney Plus, the executives. I mean, we know that Bob Iger might well be thinking of his LGBTQ plus community and how he responds to them post the politicization of all of that. But talk to us about the executives who are in studio roles. Talk about the people who perhaps were given a backseat under Chapek and how that changes.
So this part of Disney was going back to Iger's days when they bought Fox. So when they integrated Fox, there was this like almost a lot of the Disney people left, and Fox people on the television and the movie side sort of stayed, and that's been good, I think, for Disney. But I think Chapek really was not great with talent, and I don't think he had any vision for the artists or the artistry part of making the magic of Disney, and that's what Iger has that is really hard to quantify. So I think this is like a really big thing. Is I do think they have great executives managing their businesses, but I think they need some direction as far as content is concerned, and sort of like somebody with taste, and that's what Iger has that Chapek certainly doesn't. But I still think the integration of Disney and Fox in a way is still not 100% complete, and I think there needs to be this finality to it.
Ross, did you buy more Disney shares on Monday?
Well, I run a public ETF. GK is my ETF, and I did buy Disney today, and I don't know if that's been actually posted yet, but it's posted anyways at 5 o'clock Eastern. So markets are closed. So I did buy Disney aggressively today.
All right, let's think about the other companies.
I think it's wildly undervalued. I think it's wildly undervalued, and with Iger back, I think it's a whole nother business to look at now.
Another business to look at. Twitter, you're an investor in the private entity. Bloomberg reported that layoffs continued Monday, focused on sales and marketing. What do you make of that?
Well, I think you're going to see the same thing at Disney. So I think if you look at tech companies across the board, Twitter included, and probably more extreme than most, is we're seeing this resizing of the tech industry across the entire industry. And that's really part of that is from the pandemic boom to now bust, and now, also just a more realistic view of what costs and content are going to be used and achieved. But Twitter was wildly overstaffed, and now they're going to move to a staff level that's probably wildly understaffed, and then they're going to build, and they're going to build by hiring. So I think people are thinking like, oh, this is going to be the permanent size of Twitter will be extremely small, and I don't think that's correct. What this is going on is a corporate restructuring where a new culture is being built at Twitter, and one that will be much more productive for the company, the users, and its shareholders.
Your perspective there, Ross. I'm interested in what, though, might occur with a lack. You say it's wildly understaffed. Are there risks? Are there concerns while it is so?
Well, I've been, monitoring Twitter, very closely from my own experiential point of view to see if there has been any change. And I've actually would argue that Twitter is better now that Elon's taken over than before. The engagement on Twitter has been off the charts over the last couple of weeks, and not to mention all the news and information, but Twitter is still the most incredible source of news besides Bloomberg. When you're looking at Sam Bankman-Fried live tweeting during his fraud, it's only on Twitter. And so if I want news on Ukraine, I'm sorry, I have to go to Twitter. And so it's a crucially important news and information site, and one that Elon is working very hard to protect its integrity. And I think Twitter's as good as ever.
Ross, as an investor in Twitter who wants a long-term return, one thing you want to see Elon Musk do with the platform?
Add creator engagement opportunities. So by adding YouTube and these kind of features where creators can get on the platform and make a living, we post a lot of video on Twitter and YouTube, and everybody has to monetize through YouTube. So I think the creator opportunity on Twitter as a platform is enormous, and I think YouTube should be scared.